Hello and welcome to the EL Read Aloud of Nightbooks by J.A. White, read with permission from HarperCollins Publishers. So again, just to remind you, we are reading on our Edward Little Library YouTube channel, and the link is posted to that every day on Instagram and Facebook, so you can follow along. So if you missed any chapters, you can always catch up there if you wanted to, or if you want to hear it again. I don't know why, but maybe you do. So today we always kind of recap what has happened in the previous chapters, and yesterday we covered chapter 7. So we will recap chapter 7 before we start in on chapter 8. So chapter 7, if you remember right, Alex, he's trying to get Lenore the cat to like him again, so he leaves him some Fruit Loops in the morning on the counter. And Lenore goes out to put her paw out, and he thinks, oh my, he's going to get scratched, just like all those scratches that Yasmin has on her arms. But surprisingly, what he finds is that Lenore's paw is a thumb and some fingers just covered with black fur. And so she actually throws the Fruit Loops at Alex instead of scratching him. So that is one strange thing about Lenore. He then goes into the library and he sets up his desk with like a book and some pencils to make it look like he's going to be working or has been working, so that he can kind of fool Natasha into thinking that he sat at the desk and wrote stories all day. But actually he's there. He wants to explore more of the library. So he snakes his way up to the top of the tower, and he finds that there's no escape up there either. There's no exit. There's nothing. There's a ceiling, but he can't get out there. So he makes his way slowly back down. And that's when he decides that in order to figure if there's something in there that he can use, like maybe a spell book or something to get out of the apartment, he decides that he must methodically look through the books, starting with the bottom and going to the top. So he grabs the first 4 books and begins to look through them. The first 2 are nothing special. They're just regular books. But when he gets to the 3rd book, called Handprints on the Window, he expects it to be like the others. However, when he opens it, he realizes this is not like the others at all, because in the margins there is some writing by somebody just like him. And so, like I showed you yesterday, that page with all the writing on it. So that was written by a girl. He figures somebody close to his age. But at the end, right at the bottom of the page, the last sentence ends with, "If I am a good girl, she will," and it stops right there. So Alex tries to process all that he's learned. He wonders if that's Yasmin's writing, but then he dismisses it. He knows he needs to keep searching to see if this young girl has written more, because she kind of says that she's writing only one thing in each book. And she might have learned something important, and she might even have escaped. So he needs to find more of her writings. But before he can get out of the seat, he hears the bone key clicking in the lock and the door being opened. So that's where we ended yesterday. And today's chapter is called Beautiful Darkness, chapter 8. "Hey," Yasmin said, stepping into the room. "Hey," Alex said, as naturally as possible. Yasmin's goggles hung around her neck. There were fresh scratches on her arm. Her apron was splattered with some yellow, viscous substance. She shook the dirt out of her hair and slipped the Met's cap on her head. "Dinner will be ready in like an hour," she said, "so you should finish up whatever you're doing." "Thanks," Alex said. "Okay, then." She turned around as if to leave, and then turned back. "That story you read last night? It didn't suck." Alex looked down at the desk, so Yasmin didn't see the blush spreading across his face. "You really think so?" he asked. She gave him a strange look. "This can't be the first time someone said you're a good writer. Your English teacher must love you." "Not exactly," Alex said. "I do okay in school with essays and stuff, but it's not the same, and I've never shared my Nightbook stories before." Is it like you said yesterday? Yasmin asked. You afraid people will think you're weird? He nodded. Well, you don't have to worry about that happening with me, Yasmin said. I already think you're weird. You can't make it any worse. Thanks, Alex said, unable to tell from her stone-faced expression if she was joking or not. Maybe that's just the way she is, he thought. This might be an attempt to befriend me. If so, Alex couldn't mess it up. He needed Yasmin's help if he wanted to escape the apartment. Unfortunately, the girl was already turning to go. To keep the conversation alive, Alex asked the first question that popped into his head. Did you live here, in the building, before? Yasmin gave a quick shake of her head. Then, how did you get here? Alex asked. I don't want to talk about it, okay? She left the library and headed toward the kitchen. That's cool, Alex said. He held the door open as he called after her. I was just curious how Natasha tricked you into coming inside. With me? It was a scary movie. Yasmin stopped and looked back over her shoulder. What does that even mean? She asked. I heard it playing behind the apartment door, Alex said. It called to me. I couldn't stop myself from knocking. A movie? She asked in disbelief. That's how Natasha got you? It wasn't my fault, Alex said, growing angry. Magic, remember? It brainwashed me. Whatever. Well, how did you get trapped then? Alex asked. He looked at her cap and scoffed. Let me guess. You heard the Mets playing on TV, 9th inning, and you just couldn't help yourself. Her expression grew cold. You want to know what happened? She asked, stepping forward. Fine. My friend Amena lives in this apartment building, on the 12th floor. Only, when I came to see her that Saturday, the elevator stopped on the 4th. Weird, but no big deal, right? I get off the elevator thinking I'll just take the stairs when I smell the most amazing thing. Kusa mishi. Yasmin registered Alex's confused look and added, That's rice and lamb, or chickpeas if you're a vegetarian like me, all mashed together, inside squash, cooked with lemon juice, mint, and a ton of garlic. Sounds delicious, Alex said, stomach grumbling. It is, replied Yasmin. Her voice softened. My Sito, Grandma, and I used to make it together. As soon as I smelled it, I ran down the hallway, no longer thinking straight. I was convinced that if I knocked on the door to apartment 4E, Sito would answer. Yasmin looked away. She didn't, of course. How could she? My Sito's been dead for over a year. But for that one moment, I was positive that she had been returned to me. And then, finding out it was all a trick, it was like losing her all over again. For a few moments, Alex didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, he finally managed. Yasmin wiped away the tears that had begun to fall from her eyes. So, what was the movie? She asked. What? The one you heard through the apartment door. Oh, Alex said, wishing that he had never brought it up in the first place. Night of the Living Dead. Yasmin shrugged her shoulders. Never heard of it. She turned and left. This time, she didn't look back. After dinner, Natasha set up the oil diffuser and settled into her chair. Alex took his place next to her. Despite everything, he was excited to read the story he had picked out. Natasha's right, he thought. I do love an appreciative audience. You able to work better without that disgusting furball in the room? She asked. Yes, Alex said, thank you. This can be a good home for you, storyteller, Natasha said, as Yasmin took her place on the love seat and primly folded her hands in her lap. A place where you can be yourself. I was thinking about what you told me yesterday, how you wanted to sacrifice your poor little Nightbooks so you could be as boring as other children your age. I'm curious about something. Being different isn't anything new for you, is it? Truly, you've been blessed with these dark thoughts your entire life. She leaned forward and clasped her hands beneath her chin. So, why the sudden change of heart? What happened? Alex almost told her, but his storytelling instincts again warned him that it would be best to keep the real story of the Nightbooks to himself. The witch wouldn't hurt him, because if she did, she'd never find out the truth. Nothing specific happened, Alex said. It was just time for a change. Is that so? Asked Natasha. She smirked, clearly seeing through his lie, but allowing it to pass for now. The meaning in her haughty expression was clear. You'll tell me eventually. It's not like you're going anywhere. I left you fresh paper in the library, she said, eyeing the nightbook in his hand. Why are you still using that old thing? Just used to it, I guess, Alex said. Give it here. She flicked her wrist, and the book flew into her hands. Alex jumped in surprise, and Natasha cackled heartily. That was a good spell. No. Amazing, Alex said, when it was clear that she was waiting for a response. Compared to creating magical rooms that bent the laws of reality, making a book fly into your hand was pretty small potatoes. Nevertheless, Natasha seemed immensely impressed with herself. Apparently, Alex wasn't the only one who enjoyed an audience. She turned the nightbook in her hands. What happened here? She asked, examining the outside of the book. The back and front covers had peeled away in several sections, exposing raw strips of white. Only a rubber band kept the loose pages from slipping away. You have a temper tantrum when writing wasn't going your way? Alex hesitated, not wanting to tell Natasha any more about himself than necessary. When her eyes narrowed, however, he began to talk. That started as my writing journal when I was in the 4th grade, he said. My teacher told us to cover it with pictures of things we liked, so the journals would be more personalized. I went online and printed out all my favorite things. Zombies, monsters, killer dolls. It was really hard to fit them all on the notebook, but I worked at it, cutting each picture exactly right so it all fit together like a puzzle. Took me the entire weekend, but it was worth it. I couldn't wait to start writing. The smile that had blossomed on Alex's face suddenly faded. And then I brought it to school. I saw how different mine was from everyone else's. They had all printed out pictures of athletes, cute animals, boy hands, photos of friends and family. We had to leave the notebooks out on our desk that first day, like a museum, and the other kids kept staring at mine and giving me weird looks. I took the journal home that night and tore all the pictures off. It became my first nightbook. Natasha stared at him for a long time and sighed deeply. I am all kinds of mystified by you, boy, she said. The beautiful darkness that dances through your brain is a cause for celebration, and yet, for some strange reason, you run from it. Why is that? I just want to be like everyone else, Alex said. Natasha laughed. What makes you think you have a choice? She asked. She handed him the nightbook and pressed a button on the oil diffuser. The air shimmered as the misting room came into being. You're not like everyone else, and there's nothing you can do about it. We are what we are. These stories, they're just the real bubbling to the surface, weird and dark and twisted. Alex felt his face growing warm. Natasha was saying everything that he had always feared. She's right, he thought. There's darkness running through me. Why else would I have all these terrible ideas in my... Oh, goodness, Natasha said, her face cloaked by blue mist. Now you're all sad and misty-eyed. Hey, you know what always cheers me up? A story. So get to it. The shape in the mirror. Katie loved vampires. She had read all the books and watched all the movies. She knew all the rules. A vampire couldn't enter a house without being invited first. They didn't cast a reflection. You became a vampire by getting bitten or drinking vampire blood. Sometimes Katie thought it would be cool to be a vampire. She made the mistake of telling this to some kids at lunch. They decided that Katie was weird and started to bully her. It spread like wildfire throughout the school. It got so bad that Katie and her family had to move to a different town. Their new house wasn't as nice as their old house. There was a musty smell that wouldn't go away, no matter how many times her parents scrubbed the floors. Even weirder, the former occupants had abandoned some of their furniture, as though they had left in a hurry. An old sofa, several bookcases, the mirror in Katie's room. It was really old, with strange symbols carved into the wooden frame. Katie's dad offered to move it to the basement, but Katie told him no. She liked creepy things. The next morning, Katie saw something unusual. Her room was on the first floor, and the way the mirror was turned, you could look into it and see her bedroom window all the way to the house across the street. Behind her reflection, she saw a dark shape in her neighbor's front yard. Katie turned around and peeked through her window, thinking that it must be a dog or something. The front lawn was empty. When Katie looked back in the mirror, however, she could see the shape again. In fact, she thought it had gotten a little closer. She checked again. Through the window? No shape. In the mirror? Shape. It was impossible. Katie called her big brother to show him, but the shape had completely vanished. Her brother shook his head and called her a freakazoid like he always did. He missed his friends and blamed Katie for the sudden move. The shape didn't appear for 3 more days. When it finally returned, there was no doubt that it had gotten closer. Instead of sitting on her neighbor's front lawn, the shape had crossed to the middle of the street. Katie still couldn't tell what it was. The reflection was blurry, as though that part of the mirror was smudged. She thought it might have been some kind of animal. Katie didn't see the shape for a very long time after that. Eventually, she figured that it had all just been a figment of her imagination. But then she looked in the mirror one night and saw the shape peeking through her window. She could see it clearly now. It had bat-like wings folded around its body like a black robe, and eyes as red as blood. A single claw reached up and scratched the glass. Katie covered the mirror with a blanket. She told her parents what she had seen. They exchanged a worried glance and said they could get rid of the mirror first thing in the morning. Her father told Katie to sleep in the guest room. She was trying to do just that when her brother walked in. He said that he had overheard their parents talking. They didn't believe that there was really a shape in the mirror. They thought Katie was crazy, and tomorrow some men in white coats were going to come and take her away forever. Katie decided that there was only one way to prove that she was telling the truth, so her parents didn't send her away. When she was sure that everyone was asleep, she snuck up to her room and pulled the blanket off the mirror. The shape was standing right behind her reflection. Its ancient, scrunched-up face was covered by a thin layer of fur. It reached down and wrapped its long talons around mirror Katie. Then it unfurled its massive wings and rose out of sight, taking the reflection with it. Katie stared into the mirror. She saw nothing but the empty room behind her. The shape was gone. Her reflection was gone. She fainted. Katie woke up the next morning, hating sunlight. By nighttime, 2 long fangs had punched through her upper gums. It turned out that she wasn't such a vampire expert after all. She had always thought that people lost their reflection after they became vampires. Now, she knew it was the other way around. First, your reflection was stolen. Then, the change began. Her stomach rumbled. Katie crept down the hallway to her brother's bedroom. He was asleep. His head was turned away from her, exposing his bare neck. She entered his room and closed the door behind her. Alex finished reading just as the oil diffuser cycle came to an end. Blue mist dispersed into the air as the magical walls vanished. "Your story is all wrong," Natasha said. Alex's cheeks burned. "What do you mean?" he asked, unable to meet her eyes. This was part of the reason why he never shared his stories with anyone else. The slightest criticism was a hornet sting. The girl, she turned into a vampire at the end, right? Right. But that can't be. She never gets bitten by one. That's the whole idea, Alex said, hating the defensive tone in his voice. I wanted to do something different, so I made the mirror creature turn her into a vampire by taking her reflection. But that's not how it works, Natasha said in a petulant tone. I'm surprised at you, storyteller. I thought you knew better than that. Alex considered arguing, but he could see that it wouldn't do any good. Natasha would never understand that he was trying to do something creative. In her mind, the story had simply been inaccurate. Sorry, Alex said. Apology accepted, replied Natasha. She smiled smugly, like a know-it-all who had just proved the teacher wrong. Fortunately for you, I'm a witch, which makes me an expert in these matters. I'll be sure to let you know if you get any other details wrong in the future. Can't wait. Excuse me. Can't wait, Alex muttered under his breath. Natasha stood up and pressed her ear against a wall. After a few moments, she nodded with satisfaction. Good news, she said. Your story might not have made any sense, but it still got the job done. Alex's face flushed, this time with anger instead of embarrassment. He was tired of hearing his writing criticized. What do you mean, got the job done? He snapped, ignoring Yasmin's look of warning. What are you even listening to? Natasha gave him an appraising look. One of those, are you? She asked, rubbing her hands together. Curious type? Gotta know what makes the clock tick, the rain fall? Not so fond of that characteristic, Alex. Leads to trouble. Alex swallowed nervously as Natasha took a step closer to him. Sorry, he said. I thought it might make a good story. You know, noises in the walls, creepy stuff. Excuse me. Always the little author, Natasha said, though it was clear by the look on her face that she didn't believe him. You're sure you're not curious about the apartment itself? Maybe you think you could figure out a way to escape if you only knew its secrets. No, Alex said. It's not like that at... Natasha snapped her fingers in his face. Alex flinched, expecting a spell, but she just wanted to stop him talking. Since you're being so forthcoming with me, Natasha said, spitting out the word forthcoming in a way that implied its opposite, I'll do the same for you. The dark magic that keeps this apartment up and running is very old and not quite what it used to be. Sometimes things shift out of alignment and grind together, like a car that's been driven too many miles. When that happens, the walls shake, cracks appear. Alex nodded, remembering his first day in the apartment, how he thought he was in the middle of an earthquake. The thing about dark magic, though, it thrives on nightmares, Natasha said. When you read it a scary story, you soothe its aches and pains, and then it can rest easy again, at least for a little while. Alex watched Natasha carefully as she spoke. The smirk on her face made it clear that she was keeping something from him, and that she wanted him to know that she was keeping something from him. She was teasing him with half-truths. Are you saying the apartment is alive? Alex asked. Natasha snorted with laughter. Now that's a crazy idea, she said. Maybe you can write a story about it. And there we are. It's the end of chapter 8. The story's getting good now. We will continue right here tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, right here on the Edward Little Library YouTube channel. Thank you for joining in, and tell all your friends we're doing this reading, and they can catch up on any chapters 1 through 8 right on that YouTube channel. So, thanks for listening in today. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.